Hey Ghost Heads, it's Heidi from Channeling Spirits, and today we'll be re-exploring the extensive character history of Bill Murray's legendary role.
It's Dr. Venkman.
We'll use material that is considered canon, as well as other soft canon material which provide an elaborate backstory. When we first made this video in 2018, we used Bill Murray's actual birthday.
For this, we're going to be using Bill Murray's actual birthday.
Happy birthday, son. Thank you.
Since no specific date has been given as canon. However, in the variant cover for Ghostbusters Year 1, number 3, IDW took our advice and also used Bill's real birthday of September 21st, 1950. The films only give us a small amount of information on Peter's history, but in an alternate ending of the November 27th, 1988 draft of Ghostbusters II, Venkman says his background is some Irish, some German, some French, Dutch. According to the August 5th, 1983 draft of the first film, everybody hated Peter's grandfather and he was already dead.
Do you talk about the loons and the scoundrels in your family tree?
If I didn't, I wouldn't have anybody to talk about.
The 1985 novelization, Ghostbusters the Supernatural Spectacular, states Peter was born on the lot of King City Attractions in a tent on a field in Sedalia, Missouri. Bill Murray himself was born in the Midwest outside of Chicago.
Sweet home! Chicago.
Whoop whoop. It goes on to expand that he was a carny that wintered in Iowa City, and Peter had attended schools there, touring summers with the show throughout the Corn Belt states.
I used to work on carnies in the summer when I was in high school.
In the Real Ghostbusters episode, Cold Cash, Hot Water, Peter tells his father,
Look, you go back to Iowa and settle down. Take it easy.
giving further evidence to his family living there. While touring, he held jobs such as a candy butcher, a roustabout, painter, and a carpenter.
Hi, kids. I'm Venko the Clown.
What the hell kind of clown are you?
The crying on the inside kind, I guess.
His particular skill was running games of chance and discerning who would bite and who wouldn't. Later in life, Peter would still enjoy board and video games.
So you want to play Boggle or Super Mario Brothers?
It's quite possible that while growing up in the circus, he developed a disdain for sugary treats.
Look at all the junk food.
Amid Peter's inconsistent schooling, the real Ghostbusters alleged he fought a child named Rick.
And then in third grade, I got in a fight with this guy named Rick. Big guy, big muscles, brains of a trout.
In a deleted scene from the Real Ghostbusters script, The Grundle, it's revealed Peter went to the same junior high as Alec and Lee Meredith, also troubled teens, possibly near Manhattan. He also lost his T-Bow the Bunny lunchbox.
My grade school lunchbox. I lost it in 6th grade.
While Dr. Venkman is rarely serious, that may be his way of deflecting the tragedy of his mother. It's not clear what happened, but Peter does lament.
It's just that my mom, she spent so much time alone I never got to... Can you guys handle this job without me?
The Real Ghostbusters Now comic series echoes a similar tragedy, stating Peter's mother had been gone a long time and he was raised by his father, Jim Venkman. Jim is repeatedly mentioned and shown to be a con man.
I had a clown for a dad.
It's also revealed that Jim was frequently gone, especially around the holidays.
He always gets grumpy about this time of year. Christmas isn't Peter's favorite season. His father was always away at Christmas. That affects you after a while.
Christmas is once a year and it's a fraud!
Richard Mueller, who had a hand in writing each episode Jim Venkman appeared, first introduced Peter's father in Ghostbusters the Supernatural Spectacular. Peter goes to him stating, "Dad, I want to go to college," only to be challenged with, "Why?" Peter entered high school in 1964. Throughout that time, he was a part-time box boy, and during the summers, he continued working for the Carneys. Peter admitted he failed music.
Do you think he can sense I flunked music in high school?
Though that would later come in handy.
I hate this. I like to torture him.
By 1968, Peter graduated high school, voted most likely to become a used car salesman or a game show host, according to Ghostbusters II, a novel.
You know, you don't act like a scientist.
They're usually pretty stiff.
You're more like a game show host.
Peter had a consistent fondness for locomotives and eventually went to college to study engineering.
I studied engineering in college for 2 years before I found out it didn't have anything to do with trains.
He quit pursuing his degree, possibly because he couldn't pass mathematics.
Never was mine either. Failed it twice in college. Didn't stop me from being a scientist.
This may have been when his Uncle Alf suggested he open a hardware store.
I should have listened to my Uncle Alf and gone into the hardware business.
And during college, Venkman went to Woodstock in Bethel, New York.
I haven't felt like this since Woodstock.
Given Joe Namath's career for the New York Jets from 1965 to 1976, at some point during this time, Peter would have received his sweater, as he mentions.
I got this from a girl who got this from Joe Willie Namath, okay? We don't know how, we don't want to know.
Ghostbusters the Supernatural Spectacular states Peter continued to be a carnival barker in his college summers. The September 29, 1988 draft for Ghostbusters II mentions at some point he drove a cab, which he might have done in between classes.
We're going to be killed!
Oh, no.
Just keep your hands on the wheel. Slow down.
Not killed.
As an undergrad, Peter met Egon while in a women's studies course. Egon was mistakenly assigned there, but Venkman convinced him that sticking with the course would teach him to be comfortable with people. At some point before graduating, Peter also met Ray. In Ghostbusters Year 1, Number 2, Ray excitedly tells Pete about a new doctorate program on parapsychology, which is only a pilot, but they need to get in on the ground floor. Shortly after, Peter introduces Ray to Egon.
Whoa, I introduced you. If it weren't for me, you never would have met. Now that's gotta be worth something.
By 1972, Peter received his undergraduate degree. That fall, Peter would begin his doctorate in parapsychology at Columbia University. IDW's Ghostbusters Year 1, Issue 3 states that Peter co-authored several papers with Stans and Spengler, but didn't write any of his own. The Supernatural Spectacular explains how Peter didn't fall far from his father's tree as he entered the field of parapsychology because grant money was readily available and the study of ESP was in its infant stages and the results could be made up.
Your theories are the worst kind of popular tripe, your methods are sloppy, and your conclusions are highly questionable. You are a poor scientist, Dr. Venkman.
In Ghostbusters Year 1, he echoes a similar sentiment saying, most of this stuff you can't prove, but you can't disprove it either. This wasn't entirely true, but it does illustrate Venkman's ignorance on the subject. Duke University had been doing ESP experiments as far back as the 1930s. In 1978, the US government had begun the Stargate Project, a secret unit attempting to harness psychic phenomena for military purposes. The August 5th, 1983 draft states that Egon single-handedly got Peter through graduate school.
You never studied.
The Supernatural Spectacular also mentions that Egon attempted to build a death ray, but actually came up with a sonic gun. It had little effect on people, but set off soft drink cans at 100 yards. When Peter got drunk and took it down to the local Coca-Cola warehouse, Egon insisted on dismantling it. In the first film, Peter mentions,
Well, I have PhDs in parapsychology and psychology.
And by 1975, he would have graduated with his first doctorate and begun working on his second. This may have been when Peter caught Egon attempting self-trepanation.
This reminds me of the time you tried to drill a hole through your head. Remember that?
That would have worked if you hadn't stopped me.
And by June 14th, 1980, Venkman received his doctorate in psychology, a date seen in the IDW comic series. By that fall, he would have become an assistant professor, though the October 7th, 1983 script referred to Peter as an associate professor. It typically takes about 7 years to get tenure in U.S. academia.
7 years of college, and I can never remember if it's positive to negative or positive to positive.
From there, Peter would experience a series of events that would lead to the formation of the Ghostbusters.
For whatever reasons, Ray, call it fate, call it luck, call it karma. I believe that everything happens for a reason. I believe that we were destined to get thrown out of this dump.
For what purpose?
To go into business for ourselves.
So there you have it, an in-depth look at Peter Venkman's elaborate history. If you enjoyed this video and think we deserve it,
You are so odd.
please subscribe. Our Ghostbusters manual and Sedgwick Hotel key fobs are now available at our Etsy store, but are going quickly, so be sure to grab yours. Select Patreon tiers get 5 to 10% off. As always, keep coming back for more spooktacular videos, especially during the most spooktacular time of year. I'm Heidi with Channeling Spirits, and thanks for watching.
Peter, you suck. Peter, you don't do anything of value.
Dr. Venkman.
Go see a psychiatrist.
Well, I have PhDs in parapsychology and psychology.
I hate the psychiatrist.